Alright, so which page were we at?
109. And we are
109.
live. And oh, hooray, I got it working just straight through YouTube again.
Cool.
Here we are.
So you remember all those times people were like, oh, why is it saying through Streamlabs? I was like, I don't know, it just kind of forced me into that the one time.
Fair. Hi!
Oh, hello, Cameron. How are you doing? Hello, Raptor.
See, some people have click the little bell next to the subscribe.
Yes. And I truly appreciate that.
They didn't even have to send it out on Discord yet.
Indeed.
Yeah, God, I got the Black Sails theme song stuck in my head. Not that it's a bad song, just like I'm trying not to just randomly go like da 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 da. Like one of you will be reading. It's like, yeah, and then she turned it da 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 da. Hello, Mike. Doing pretty good. D&D was fun. We burned a demon's house down. Nice. Hey, Cameron, I've been meaning to ask, have you been enjoying World of Warcraft?
Yeah, I'm going to be downloading it soon, or that free trial, and I have a bit of free time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Notified. Nice.
You couldn't pay me to play World of Warcraft now. Not even because of any stigma or anything like, oh, World of Warcraft players, whatever. It's out of principle. My brother has, for probably since grade school, has been trying to get me to play World of Warcraft, and I've made a commitment by now.
To just say
I
no.
have made a lifelong commitment to refuse.
What about RuneScape?
That's fair.
RuneScape, he has never asked me to play.
Who gave you $20 to sing the Sales of Color theme? No, it's Basketball American Bed Sheets for boat. That's the alternate name. Oh yeah, WoW's been great. Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
I started watching The Good Place yesterday, and I really like it.
Oh, is that with Ted Danson?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Ted Danson and Kristen Bell. I thought I thought I'd just give it a shot, and I was like, I think I'll like it. It's done by the people that made Parks and Rec, which I really liked. So
yes,
I started watching 1,000-Pound Sisters because I like TV that makes me feel better about myself.
That's always good.
That's so fucked.
Oh, don't worry, Raptor.
All I know about that show is that one of the sisters is actually doing quite well for herself, and one of them is actually put weight on.
Yeah.
Correct.
Jesus.
Gemma, I was going to mention this to you. Cameron says if you want to play with us, you'll need to make sure you create your account on the Americas server.
Yes, I remember you saying that, because for some reason they don't all have the same servers?
No, too many players on one.
Ah, okay.
Oh well.
Yeah. Yes, I am.
I've been playing a lot of Skyrim recently. That's what I've been doing when I have been watching TV.
Nice. All right. I'm sorry I'm still gushing about this. I'm just so glad that it's back straight through YouTube, so now I can use the chat on my PC instead of needing to have it pulled up on my phone too.
Hooray.
Yes.
Hooray!
And I don't know why I just thought about it, but look, cocaine.
Cocaine.
Oh, look at Cameron bragging about getting pizza for dinner, completely oblivious to the fact that I can't anymore.
You can. It just has
because
to
I
be.
haven't shared it.
It has to be
except
every.
to you two.
You can still have pizza. Just it has to be less frequently.
For the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Maybe you could have it as like you can have like a pizza, like pizza once a month type event, and it'd be like really,
Yeah.
like a really fun day when you get all the pizza.
Yeah, monthly
Maybe,
pizza
but
party.
my mom is going to probably be really strict with me because it is. So, for those of you who are no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, I got my blood test results back today, and everything's fine except for high cholesterol. So, the doctor told me I need to be on a low fat, low cholesterol diet for probably the next 6 months, and which is hard for me because for my whole life I've been very used to eating whatever the fuck I want without any consequence. And so this is going to be a big change. And so when my mom came home, because I told her about it over text, because I told her, oh, after all the Easter candy's gone, I'll join you in your keto diet. I can't do that anymore. So I told her that. So now she's looking through all these cookbooks, trying to find stuff that I can eat. And so she's like, so all that Easter candy is done for you. No. Like, I like having chocolate chip muffins for breakfast. She's like, none of that. No. Pretty much nothing sweet. And I'm like, I can't even have one Cadbury cream egg.
Oh no.
And she's like, no.
Oh. See, don't listen to that. You can have one every now and then.
Yeah, but I'm going to try to take it seriously.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Well, I was like, well, like, yeah, if it's 6 months, you can manage to get it back down to a sort of reasonable, like one. You could probably just be a little bit more like, I'll have this as a treat and sort of have it on the odd occasion.
Oh yeah, here's the thing. And I know this is a bad habit. Once I get my cholesterol down, I'll probably just go back to my old ways.
I'm not saying
So
that's not
just
what
a little
I
bit
do.
better, probably a little bit better, but chances are the diet will not stick after those 6 months.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's what happened with me, but that's kind of what happened with me.
Raptor, why are we talking about Macbeth and what a simp he is?
What is going on? And hello,
Hey,
Rudy.
you can't say the Scottish play in the presence of me.
But we're not performing it.
Yeah, but we're performing.
No, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm already cursed. Fun fact, I always at least go back and re-listen to the streams at least once just to make sure I didn't say or do anything too cringy. And I refused to watch part 1 because of my failure of English accents.
Aw. I thought it was alright.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
I was trying because I'm a huge fan of Downton Abbey. The what was her name? Prudence.
Oh.
The character.
Oh,
yeah. No, the character in the story we're reading. The old lady.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so for her, I was trying to channel the cook, her voice, and looking back, I'm just like, yeah, that, not at all.
Well, I mean,
I have not seen Downton Abbey. I just know that Maggie Smith is in it.
And she's a boss.
okay, but on the subject of Macbeth, did anyone ever watch Gargoyles, the Disney cartoon?
Yes.
Yes, we were watching it with Logan now. Well, not as we speak, but now.
Every time I go back to watch it, I always forget that Macbeth himself is like a major villain in the show, or at least antagonist.
Yeah, it's like you got Macduff and everything as well.
Yeah, because he was like cursed. He had his life force tied to Demona.
So, do you know what also makes me funny? Do you know what also makes me laugh? I said, "Well, shit, what makes me funny?" For God's sake. I'm really tired. Okay. The part that makes me laugh about gargoyles is that, like, one of the villains is played by Jonathan Frakes, and the other one's played by
Marina
her.
Sirtis.
Yeah, Marina Sirtis plays Troy.
Well, and you know who voices his butler, right?
Oh, is it Michael Dorn?
No, it's Brett Spiner.
That's it. Yes, I knew it was somebody else from Star Trek.
Yeah, Michael Dorn, I think, does do a guest character at one point.
Yeah, and obviously Keith David is
Goliath.
Gideon, Goliath.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Did you just say
Goliath.
Gideon?
Yes.
I was about to say, because you're talking about all these voice actors, and I'm like, even when you're talking about something I've seen, I still don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Clancy Brown is in it.
Yeah. And,
Clancy Brown, I know who that is.
Yeah, Macbeth is John Rhys Davies. I'm pretty sure.
That was always that was funny when I was trying to get Logan to try and remember. Like, I was like, Logan, do you recognize these voices? And they're like, he's like, no.
I could just picture him saying it in like really deadpan too. No.
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 Like the same way he said no when Jacob made him read in that one bad creepypasta. No.
But yeah, someone actually showed a clip from like a 2014 remake of DuckTales, and there's like this like horse statue that's voiced by Keith David, and you know Scrooge and them are fighting a genie or something, and they ask the statue for help, and he's like, "All right, I swore I would never do this again." And then like it just like grows wings and stands on its hind legs. It even has like a huge like saddle belt that looks like a belt buckle, and he just like throws the wings out and goes, "I live again."
References.
Yeah, they actually play like just a short clip of the Gargoyles theme song.
Yeah, nice. I heard the new DuckTales was good.
Yeah,
you should check that out.
Yeah.
The song isn't.
Oh, nothing's ever gonna top the original.
No, and it's like David Tennant, I think, voices Scrooge McDuck.
Interesting.
Actually, so you know how last night I've sent in Discord the Warp Zone acapella version of Captain Planet's theme song?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Well, I like when the Warp Zone does acapella, so I started listening to a bunch of them, and one of them they do the DuckTales theme, and then it sent me a whole bunch of other recommended videos, which is the new voice actors for the new one singing the original theme song, and I'm like, oh, that's cute.
Aww,
but I'm like, wait, they're calling it the old theme song, so is the new one different? All I know is that it's a girl singing it, but I thought it was like pretty similar, but I guess not.
It's faster.
Oh.
Like, it seems to be faster. Like, it's quite similar, but also not.
Huh.
Yeah.
But before we begin, Kenzie, the same guy who posted that clip from DuckTales, came up with a superhero idea that I think you would enjoy.
Oh yeah, what's that?
A humanoid alligator with like stretching powers like Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man, called Elongator. And his secret identity name would literally be Elon, like Elon Musk, and then Gator.
Is this Darius you're talking about?
No, it's actually on a completely different server. The gentleman goes by Ares.
Fuck you, Ares. Rudy, stop apologizing. He forgives you.
Time and a place. Alright, so,
should we recap from last time?
Yes, but, Kenzie, for no reason at all, I wanted to ask, how's Eli doing?
He's not barking right now. Wait till he starts barking.
I was gonna say, like, he's pretty calm right now, huh?
Uh-huh.
Damn.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have
Okay.
a new toy, so.
We won't show it yet. We'll wait till there's gonna be at least one point where Eli will probably start barking, but Manny specifically made a commission to Cricket to draw something specifically for when Eli starts barking during our streams.
Yes, and I love it.
I showed my mom it last night.
Oh, what'd she think?
Oh, she loved it. She said it was great.
Excellent. I'm glad. Alright, so last time, like Rudy just said, last time on this story, because the title's too long to read out every time.
Yeah, it's like the thing about the thing. There we go.
Yeah.
The thing in the apartments.
That's it.
Rat shit in the apartments. That's what the new name.
Yeah, and well, I mean, with how we're saying this, I think it's appropriate to put we're bad at this up.
Yes.
So yeah, a couple moved into this apartment building, seemed perfect, but
Or was it?
They found a survival guide left in the cupboard by the previous tenant.
Well, not even both of them, just the OP, OP.
Yeah. And found out that her husband was eaten by things in the elevator. There was
something weird's going on.
Yeah, there's a creepy window washer who appears and disappears. Excuse me. People who can burn people. Sphinx cats that burn people. A salty old lady who turned her granddaughter into one of the monsters in the elevator.
And all that I was vibing with until we got to the very last part we read, in which children turn into rats, two creepy twins, which again I could vibe with. And then we have people and part of a cult. We have ghost cult.
Yes.
And then now I'm annoyed. Because I hate Deus Ex cults.
I think they do sort of explain it.
Did you hear that?
There he is. Let me know what you think, everyone.
He's like fucking clockwork.
Yes.
The actual workings of a clock, not the terrible story right over on the Bad Creepypasta channel.
Yes.
We will not compare my dog to a shitty story about rape.
No.
No. God, no.
But Rudy says, r//
There it is.
No sleep titles be like, one time I was stabbed in the shin by a gnome while I was watching a rerun of EastEnders and I was scared.
It's way too real. I do think at one point we should read the story, My Sugar Daddy's Scaring Me.
Yes.
Yes. I don't even know what you're talking about, but yes.
It's beautiful.
It's like, well, my sugar daddy is starting to creep me out. Like, any ideas? It's actually really good.
I am all on board.
It's beautiful.
Well,
I love it. It's amazing. Yes.
Just checking. There's no cults inserted right the fuck out of nowhere, right?
What's that?
There are no, as long as it has no cults that are brought into the story right the fuck out of nowhere, I'm all on board.
I don't think there's any cults. I think that story is cultless.
Good.
Or cutless, like black. I'll leave.
Gemma, sit down and shut up and read.
What's the first line? Are you reading first?
I think the first line would be, I hadn't checked, but yeah, I am going to start.
Should we start from maybe I didn't sleep much?
Yeah, sure. Alright. I didn't sleep much. Nothing new. When I woke up, Terry was still asleep. I didn't want to disturb her, so I walked back to my flat, desperate to avoid anything strange on my way. The stairs must have, noticed because they didn't skip on my way up. I hadn't checked the time when I left Terry's, but I reached my door at the same time as a familiar face. Postman Ian was stood there, dropping letters on my doorstep. "Hey, love," he shouted as he noticed me.
I need to talk. Can you come inside? Just 5 minutes, please.
I practically begged him at the doorstep. I told him everything that had happened the night before, how Natalia was out for revenge and I was the object of her rage. I begged him to tell me how to kill them, but he claimed he didn't know. He said if I kept my doors locked and didn't let them in, then I'd be fine. He looked shirty as I mentioned killing them. Didn't even suggest asking Prudence how to do it. Something was telling me there wasn't much point. He seemed so disingenuous. I wanted to trust him. So badly I wanted to trust him. I had been so vulnerable with him over Jamie. But if Prudence Hemmings could forget to mention what Bernie had done, and conveniently never pass on the method to kill these awful people, leaving them around to terrorize her friends and neighbors, then she could be a liar too. Could I really trust Ian? When he provided no answers and no real help, something inside me told me that I needed to get him out of my flat. I needed to rethink. Start working things out on my own. I made excuses to Ian and sent him on his rounds. Prudence left me these rules, but she left so much out. How did I know I wasn't always a pawn in some sick game? Her fantasy life as a puppet master setting me up to fail. She's kept her granddaughter in a cage for years. Maybe she enjoys suffering. I wasn't going to give up easily, though. Natalia wasn't going to win. I decided then and there that I needed to attend the committee meeting today and start building an army against Natalia. I didn't need Prue's help or her methods. With enough manpower, I could do it myself. This was war. Gemma?
I sat all morning thinking about everything, cup after cup of coffee in front of me to keep me awake. Once the postman had left and I was alone with my thoughts, they just continued to get louder. I thought about Natalia and the cult, about the kids and their nighttime antics, about the committee meeting, Jamie and how much I missed him, Georgia and my burning guilt, and Mr. Prentice, who was finally making those aforementioned animal noises. Most of all, I thought about the note left for me on move-in day, how it had changed everything. My whole life was different now. I was alone and it felt my new home was attacking from every angle. I reread the note a few times over my coffee. I worried about my rent. It was tight but manageable. School is currently out in the UK, but as a training teacher assigned to a school, I still get paid a small amount throughout the summer. The rent is low, and with a second summer job, I can just about make it without Jane. It sounds strange, but it felt nice to worry about something normal for a minute, even if I should have been worrying about my survival and the many entities currently trying to kill me. I didn't get to stew for too long. I had to get ready for the committee meeting. To the events of the night before and my growing mistrust of Prudence, it was imperative that I got the neighbours on side if I was going to achieve anything like my goals of eradicating the imposter/cultist neighbours. The meeting was at noon in flat 31. There was a poster on a communal notice board by the entrance that I was glad to spot. Terry hadn't mentioned the time when we met, and all our meetings since had been a bit hectic to discuss it. The poster promised tea and cake, so my stomach rumbled at the thought. I hadn't eaten properly in days. At 11:55 I left the flat, and I wandered out into the corridor. I'd never seen so many neighbours. Mr. Prentice, however, was still making that awful noise. I watched in disbelief as every single person in the corridor walked past his door as if it was silent.
Kenzie?
I did my usual deliberation on whether to take the stairs or lift, but yet again the stairs won. I still couldn't bear being where Jamie died, and all these extra flights were keeping me fit. Flat 31 belonged to an older lady named Molly Thompson and her husband Eric. She had a blue rinsed head of curls attached to her head and had gone to the effort to make homemade Battenberg cake. Other neighbors had brought along baked goods as well. It reminded me of a school fair. The flat itself was decorated for the 70s, with plenty of china cat ornaments littered around. I sat down in a dusty plastic garden chair, one of many that Molly seemed to have acquired and laid out for the residents pouring in. I hadn't seen community spirit like this in my life. I smiled as I saw Terry, Eddie, and Ellie wander in. It was nice to see some familiar faces. I noticed people looking at me, wondering who I was. It probably wasn't often they got new neighbors. Eddie came running up to me, swung his arms around me, and sat down in the rickety garden chair next to mine. It was so sweet. Terry smiled at me and took a seat the other side of mine. Ellie sat next to her brother. The brown puppy dog eyes were back. No claws. "I'm glad you came," Terry said to me, loud enough to hear over the voices of the neighbors. I really want you to see the good side of the block. We don't bite, really." She laughed nervously as she realized the irony of her statement.
"Terry, I need help. We need to stop those people from coming back again, and from terrorizing people. The block can't go on like this."
I wanted to make the purpose of my attendance clear to her. It was time for things to change.
That's you.
Okay. "But if you don't let them in, and then they don't bother you. I've spoken to the kids. They know not to do it again. That those people are dangerous." She paused for a moment and sighed. "Although them running away didn't help, the kids think they're indestructible now. They've been telling me all morning that they're going to kill the bad guys."
Alright, I'll take the next three.
Okay.
She looked so resigned, but it was true. They did run away from the twins. Maybe there was something in that. I knew they could die, I just had to work out how. But as the thought crossed my mind and I looked at Eddie and Ellie, I couldn't imagine taking the risk. I could have flat out gone back and asked Prudence, but to be honest, I didn't want anything to do with her. She gave me such a bad feeling. I was doubting everything she told me.
"It doesn't matter if you can keep them away. We can't all live in fear. Yours aren't the only kids in this building."
I knew this from surveying the room.
"But I bet not all the kids here are as special as yours. What if another family burns to death because their kids were hyper one night?"
I could see this struck a chord with Terry. She looked at me with glassy eyes, as if on the verge of tears.
"You're right. Molly's the chairwoman and she can be a little strict, but you can bring it up under any other business."
She spoke with a lump in her throat.
"Here you go, by the way."
She handed me a piece of printed paper. Any other business felt a bit lackluster, but it would do, as long as it got discussed. I turned my attention to the piece of paper. It was the agenda for the meeting. For something written so formally, it appeared farcical. It seemed other flats and floors had different but equally strange issues to mine. There were only 6 items on the agenda for the meeting, with AOB as the 7th. They were as follows. 1. Welcome and introductions with apologies for absence. 2. Replacing of the flickering lights on floor 11. It seems to incite vicious behavior from the pets and elderly of that floor. 3. Serving a formal residence letter of concern to the man who doesn't move from the bottom of the stairwell on floor 5. 4. Finances. Budgets for general maintenance and the annual barbecue. 5. The stairs with no grip leading up to floor 14 at the very top, and the health and safety hazards this presents. 6. Soundproofing of Mr. Prentice's flat, number 48. Gemma?
I was comforted to know that I wasn't alone in dealing with all these strange occurrences. I was also chilled to the core to know for certain that it was the entire building that was more than just a bit odd. What really struck me as odd is that when I thought about it, I had seen that man on floor 5 when going down the stairs, but I never noticed that I'd been every time, or that he had never moved until this moment. The meeting began with a loud and dissatisfying clink. By this point, the tiny 70s themed flat was packed. Garden chairs had all run out and people were standing. Molly Thompson stood up from her floral-patterned armchair and bashed a teaspoon against the outside of her cup. She reminded me of a very strict disciplinarian school teacher I had worked with during my university placement. She commanded a quiet. "I think we should get started, everyone!" she shrilled, her voice growing louder with every word until the crowd came back to a silent hum. "Right. Firstly, we are not going to skip the introductions today. Apologies have been given by Jo and Steph of Flat 2 and yet again by Mr. Prentice. We have a new face in the room, and as I'm sure many of you have noticed," she gestured to me and looked in my direction, but didn't really make any eye contact. She was just talking about me as I sat in the room. Eventually, she addressed me directly. "Stand up, dear, introduce yourself. We're pleased to have you here." I was deeply uncomfortable. I could feel some sort of panic coming on. I never liked standing in crowds very much, but I stood up anyway. Hi. My name is Kat. I live in flat number 42. I moved in with my boyfriend, Jamie, but he was killed in the lift by the weird rat creatures you people have living here. The people that claim to live in the burned out flats won't leave me alone, and one in particular seems to want me dead. Oh, and that window cleaner outside my flat makes me want to scoop my own eyes out with a spoon every time he knocks on the door. Nice to meet you all. The crowd had gasped a little.
I sat down, instantly mortified. I don't know what happened. The normality and structure of the meeting overwhelmed me. There's something about a sense of order and normality amongst chaos. It does something to your brain, and for me, for the first time in this whole journey, it sent me into a meltdown. I sobbed as I hit the chair, both in pure mental exhaustion and disappointment that I had blown my chance at building any sort of army against Natalia. Terry rubbed my shoulder. Molly broke the awkward silence that had blanketed the room.
Nice to meet you, Catherine. I understand life in this building can be a little overwhelming. We did ask the previous occupant to let us intervene when you moved in, but she was insistent. In hindsight, we might need to review our policies on new tenants. I am so very sorry for the loss of your partner. The lift is a most unfortunate situation.
She had been in positions of power in her life for certain. She responded professionally but coldly. There was no feelings in her condolences. She came off like a corrupt politician digging themselves out of a hole. She did decide to skip the introductions after my outburst. I also hate it when I'm called Catherine. My parents named me Katie and I shortened it to Kat. Her presuming it was Catherine added to her school teacher demeanor. She carried on with the proceedings pretty swiftly, and interesting characters present at the meeting started to emerge. My favorite was a large middle-aged Caribbean woman named Precious St. Fleur, who would not accept Molly's claims that there was not enough in the budget to replace the lighting on floor 11. She got up and lifted her skirt to reveal a large, deep bite mark across her stomach caused by her dog after a long episode of the lights flickering. When that didn't change Molly's answer, she lifted her trouser leg to reveal a small but still noteworthy bite mark on her leg from her elderly mother who lives with her. Molly didn't budge.
It took what felt like an eternity to get to any other business. If I weren't so focused on my goal, I would have enjoyed hearing about the quirks of the other floors, maybe tried to engage a little, but I just couldn't concentrate. When the chairwoman asked if anyone had any other business, she scanned the room quickly. I stood up from my chair, and she locked in on me with her eyes. My hands were shaking, and I could feel cold sweat forming all over my body.
Catherine, what can I help you with, dear?
She asked in a patronizing tone.
I want help in getting rid of the people pretending to be from the burned out flats. I can't bear being the only person that doesn't like living in fear.
I stayed boldly, trying not to break down again.
Dear, we have had this discussion multiple times and it's been taken off the agenda. I am aware you're new here, but there is nothing we can do about certain problems within this building, and for this particular issue we would appreciate you not letting them into your home. and ignoring them like the rest of us.
She snapped back.
But that's not good enough. Terry's kids answered the door last night. They're children, it's easily done. What if someone else's child does it and aren't so lucky to survive? One burned my friend so bad a few nights ago that she's still unconscious in hospital.
This I knew from social media. A few people called out in agreement with me from the crowd.
The only one who's ever been able to deal with them is Prudence, and that difficult woman never revealed her methods. Don't think we didn't try. You're suggesting a suicide mission. You do well to remember you are new here.
Molly hissed through her teeth. Did she have to mention I was new so many times? It was grating on me.
I'm willing,
shouted Precious. She seemed stronger than the rest in her earlier rant. I was glad to have her on side. Where she came forward, a few others followed. Soon I had 5 people plus myself willing to form a subcommittee to get rid of the cultists. Molly didn't like it, but she agreed to let us do it. Gemma?
There was me, Precious, and Terry, along with a lady named Shanti, who lived a few doors down from me. A man named Anton and his friend Leo from Floor 8 made up the group. To be honest, they just seemed keen to get involved with any kind of battle. Leo was the loud one, and Anton was mostly silent. I invited them to my flat after Molly swiftly adjourned the meeting. Inviting anyone into my home made me anxious now. I found myself studying each of their faces to ensure they weren't too average and I hadn't invited the wrong person in. I was fairly certain I hadn't. Eddie and Ellie settled it in front of my television in the bedroom so they didn't hear our conversation. They may only be kids, but I felt safer with them there. We discussed for hours how we could bring the imposter people into one place and kill them all. Leo was particularly creative. He came up with weird and wacky ways to end them, from locking them in a room and blasting with fire extinguishers until they freezed, to herding them into the lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m. The whole time I waited nervously for a knock on the door, for them to come for us, but they didn't. We got time to plan. But despite the time, it never really took off. No idea seemed feasible. I shared everything I knew, my conversation with Prue the night before in Terry's flat, everything. Precious listened to my tales, intent, late before speaking.
Derek would have helped us. He was a great man, used to turn up at my door the dead of night just as those lights started and to take my dog for a walk.
She spoke of the gardener with a fondness. Prudence told me about Derek. She said he's been gone since the garden was demolished. I replied flatly.
It was awful when he left. The woman that used to live here was nasty to him. I watched out my window as she tore up the garden. I know she was grieving for that little girl, but I know Derek only ever wanted to help.
Shanti spoke up from the corner. She had been pretty quiet the whole time.
He was the whole reason we didn't have those awful creatures from the lift all over our homes anymore. My brother was killed by one before the agreement. He was 4 years old.
I twitched as she told her story. Shanti had such sad eyes, and speaking about her brother only filled them further with sadness. This is another thing I don't understand. Why have any agreement if you manage to kill most of them? Why not all? I asked, feeling anger over Jamie burned through my throat as I spoke. Precious laughed. Terry shot her a look from across the room.
It's told you the whole story, have they?
Shanti asked, a single tear running down her face. What do you mean? This was driving me insane. Nothing was simple. How could I trust anyone?
When Prudence and some of the others killed the creatures, they killed a large group of them in one hit. They had started to work out that food scraps and pet food were attracting them, and they gathered all the pet food in the tower block to one empty flat on the floor the fire had happened. The creatures came in droves, just like expected, and they set the flat alight. Again. Flat was burned to ash on top of the pre-existing ash. Nothing could survive that.
Shanti was interrupted after this by Leo.
And then 3 giant rat motherfuckers literally rose from the ashes, triple as smart and strong as fucked shit up.
He said, and looked a look of excitement on his face. Shanty rolled her eyes and continued.
So all Prudence did was cause literally a bigger problem. She didn't kill them. All she did was help them evolve. There was only 3 of them, but they learned to sneak attack. More people died than during the original infestation. They were more intelligent, but not in the way it comes across when the agreements are spoken of. We couldn't speak to or reason with them. Terry was looking on the floor. Only Derek was able to do that. He spoke to them like he spoke to the garden. He made it safe for everyone again. I wasn't there. I was too young, but we were told he didn't even have to use words. They understood just a series of movements and eye contact. Derek explained the rules with the lift. He told us it was a gesture of goodwill. The creatures needed a home and seemed attracted to the building, and we would let them live there and stop killing their kind if they would stop killing ours. But to show them some respect, we would allow them a small time frame where they could unleash their instinctual nature, but only if someone came to them. There are only 2 left now. Prudence killed the other during what happened with her granddaughter. But that only made them 2 stronger. Like they absorbed a third. I tried to take in all the information I was receiving, but I couldn't. It was all too much. Derek isn't coming back. It's been years. This is pointless. Terry finally erupted. Precious laughed again. How do you know? You speak to dear old Prue all the time. Know something we don't? Precious spoke sarcastically, but I think she meant what she said. It was becoming clear that Prudence Hemmings wasn't too popular in this building. I don't speak to her all the time. We just keep in contact. She was always nice to me. Terry tried weakly to defend herself. That's because you're naive and a pushover. She used you because no one else would give her the time of day. Precious was about to launch into a full rant on Terry. I was glad Eddie and Ellie were in the other room and couldn't hear. I wonder if she'd seen them the other night. I decided to stop the rant. This was becoming counterproductive and we were getting nowhere with our plans. I interjected and told them that all I needed them to leave so I could sleep. Partly true, although I knew I couldn't sleep. I had other things to do. They all filed out of my flat. Terry and the kids were the last to leave. She gave me a hug as she left and told me to get a proper night's rest, telling me she was always there for a cuppa and a chat. It was sweet. I felt sorry for Terry. The kids hugged me too as they left. I know she spoke to Prue, but I was certain that it was really and entirely innocent. I sat in the empty flat, disheartened by that my assembly of an army had turned into a bickering shit show with no real suggestions on how to kill the imposter neighbors. I felt totally alone. I couldn't trust Prue or Ian or pretty much anything I thought I knew. Maybe Prue didn't even kill those neighbors. They only told me half-truths about the creatures after all.
I was left alone with my thoughts again, and after a few hours, a good one finally struck me, but I needed supplies. I left the building and went to the nearest shop to gather the items I needed. For what I needed, in the time of night I had to travel to a 24-hour supermarket. It took half an hour each way on the bus, but I stayed focused. My bags were heavy and awkward on the way back to the block, but if it paid off, this was going to be worth it. I trudged up the stairs. It took me two trips and 24 flights of stairs instead of 14 to get everything in my flat and organize myself. It only took 16 and a large gym bag that was much easier to carry on the way back down, thankfully. I passed the man on floor 5 twice. Now I noticed him. He made my skin crawl a little. I walked through the downstairs corridor, diverting away from the main entrance and passing all the ground floor flats to the door at the back of the building. The door at the back led to a small concrete area with a grass strip along the side and a bench decorated with a memorial plaque. This was the block's outside space. As is typical in the city, the whole bench was covered in graffiti. The memorial was unreadable. I got to work. I dug the strip of grass, turning soil with my new equipment. I'd never been green-fingered, and to be honest, the shrubs I had bought had been so heavy I had grown to resent them a little. I worked for an hour and a half. I was sweating and night had come. It was pitch black, and I was using my phone torch to see. I had almost given up until I got up from my crouching position to stretch my knees. I reached my arms out, put down my shovel, and took a seat on the bench. I hadn't seen him arrive, but the man was already sat there. He wore a flat cap and a jacket, despite it being the middle of summer and a beautiful night. He just smiled warmly at the shrubs for a moment, without a word. Eventually he spoke. "I've missed this place. Name's Derek." I sat silently for a moment in shock that my plan had even worked. It seemed almost too simple, too easy. But here he was.
Derek had a kindly face. Wrinkles around his eyes and cheeks only added to the softness of his expression. His white hair poking out from beneath his flat cap stood out in the dark night.
"That's a lovely little patch you've planted. I can look after it if you like. I used to maintain the last garden here,"
he said, breaking the silence that had followed since his initial words. "I know who you are. We need you," was all I could manage. The mental exhaustion and fatigue from the whole experience had built up, but his arrival was like finishing a bad day working at school. I felt like I could relax again, even if only a little.
"What's your name, darling?"
He asked. "It's Kat. I live in flat 42 now." His face lit up as I confirmed my flat number.
"Prudence is gone?"
He asked. "She's gone, but the whole place is a mess. So many things are happening and the residents are suffering," I answered. We chatted for what felt like hours, outside with nothing but moonlight. He told me how he used to consider the building part of the garden, a place for him to maintain, the residents just like the plants he looked after. I explained my whole experience since moving in. I told him about Jamie and I sobbed. Derek held me as I cried and made me feel safe, and something I had forgotten the feeling of since receiving Prue's note. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. I told him about Natalia and the cultists, the problem they had been causing. He was particularly heartbroken when he heard that they had used Eddie and Ellie for entry. He'd gone before they were born, but remembered Terry as a child and how sweet she was. He was pleased when I told her she was a sweet adult, what a sweet adult she had become. My claims that Prudence was the only person who knew how to kill the imposter and neighbours were met with a skeptical expression, which gave me some hope. Derek listened to my entire tale with barely a word. When I finished, he stood up and asked me to follow him. I was confused, but I did as I was told. He walked me to the entrance of the lift. I lifted my arm to check the time on my watch. We had been outside for quite some time, and the idea of the creatures being inside made my heart pound and my stomach turn.
"You are safe. It's 12:32 a.m. There's no need to worry or to check your watch."
And with that, he pressed the call lift button. Despite his insistence that I was safe, my stomach continued to do gymnastics. Felt like forever before the lift finally made the clunking sound that meant it had reached the bottom. I felt my whole body shaking violently as the doors opened. I don't know what I expected to see. We are in the same time zone, but every time I looked at the life, I pictured Jamie's dead, crunched up body.
"Step inside."
He said. "I can't. Please don't make me," I begged.
"I won't let anything happen to you, but you need to see something."
There was such sincerity in his eyes as he spoke. I had never trusted someone so completely, so quickly, but every fibre of my being told me this man was entirely good. I stepped inside the lift. Derek, stepping in behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder as I hyperventilated. He gently turned me to the face of the panel of buttons that control where the lift stops.
I can take over.
Okay, thank you.
"What is wrong with this panel? Do you see it?"
He asked cryptically. I studied the panel, read all the numbers, counting them. I couldn't see anything wrong. I tried. I really tried, but nothing seemed out of place. Everything you expected to find was there and nothing more. I shook my head, barely regaining my composure.
Can you take us to floor 9, please?
He smiled slightly as he made the request. I looked back to the panel to press the button, but floor 9 didn't exist. I was so confused. I'd counted the numbers. I was sure of it. Derek must have made it disappear. The panel didn't look any different to before. I can't explain it, looking at it. I would have swore blind nothing was wrong with it even once I knew, but floor 9 didn't exist. Derek could see my frustration. It was like the building was now playing tricks on me. He walked me out of the lift and sat me down on the bottom of the stairs before he finally began to speak.
The building is like a living organism. It can seal off parts of the world, and it can open up others you never could have imagined. When those awful people burned that whole floor of residence, I was devastated. Some wonderful people lived in those flats, both of the usual and unusual variety. But those people had no limit to their cruelty. Whole families burned alive. It was a tragedy that made me so angry. I felt so guilty when it happened. I can predict what some of our more tricky residents are going to do and make sure I'm there to help. But those people were nothing to do with this place. I couldn't see what they were planning, so I couldn't stop it.
At this point, I noticed that one of the hairless cats had sat between us. Derek looked at it with tears brimming in his eyes. He stroked it and it moved onto his lap. Derek's fingers didn't burn at all. He continued.
When it happened, the building used its defense mechanisms and sealed off the entirety of the floor. It stopped the fire from spreading and kept the perpetrators there to die by their own hands. The building only allowed the floor to be unsealed once they were dead. It took about a week before those awful people turned up again, asking for sugar at people's doors. The first few let them in. It was so difficult. So many residents burned alive that I was having to use their remains for my garden just to hide the dead. The entire community were terrified and grieving for those that died. No matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't predict them or see them, so I took Prudence, who at the same time seemed a perfectly reasonable woman, to the burned out floor. Floor 9, however, had been sealed again. There was no button in the lift, and it always skipped on the stairs. Only no one had noticed. This building really is a magnificent creature.
I stared at him in amazement through the whole story. I was exhausted, but my brain was working in overdrive to process what he was telling me. I had started to stroke the cat too. My fingers did burn, but I didn't flinch. I found its company comforting. He carried on.
I went back later that night and took the stairs again, alone this time. I think my intentions were clear, and the stairs allowed me access to floor 9 for the first time since just after the fire. I brought Prudence to the floor within the hour. The stairs had stopped skipping floor 9 for me, although I later learned that when Prudence had tried alone, she was not allowed access. We explored the floor, walking amongst the remnants of our dead friends' belongings. Eventually, we came across one of the soulless arsonists roaming the halls. It appears that's where they spend their time when they aren't out terrorizing the residents trying to claim more victims. He was disturbed and disoriented to see anyone not like them on that floor. He twitched a little and spat out the sugar line as if it was an automatic response. I almost felt sorry for him. He claimed to be from flat 66. More people were approaching behind him. Prudence was terrified. She was starting to sweat profusely and back away from the man, but it didn't cool her down. He was burning her slowly. I felt nothing. See, the stranger things in life just don't seem to affect me. I've never known why. Sometimes I just know how to deal with them, like it's programmed into me. On this new playing field, in their domain, I knew what to do. I grabbed the man and ran him down to flat 66, 4 doors from where we were standing. I threw him into the flat and waited. The other arsonists were approaching. The man tried to exit the flat that was doorless after the wooden doors all burned to cinders in the fire. But as he reached the door, something stopped him. He couldn't leave, no matter how hard he tried or how much he screamed. Prudence lit up. She grabbed hold of one that had tried to kill her friend Molly. She remembered that the flat number she had claimed to be from, and repeated my actions, with a lot more sweating and some winces of pain. It worked again. Prudence wanted to go after the rest, but as they got closer, I could see the blisters forming on parts of her body. I dragged her out of the hallway and back into the stairwell. We ran. She begged me to take her back, kept telling me that the stairs wouldn't let her, that it was too dangerous. The residents had started to learn not to let them in, and we had no casualties at all after we trapped the first two. Don't get me wrong, it's a problem I was intending to deal with, but it was around that time that we first learned the council would be building that monstrosity over the top of my garden.
He gestured to the window.
Oh. Who was next?
I mean, I was still going just because Vanny has a lot of dialogue. Once Derek stops talking, I would hand it over to him.
Fair enough. You go.
Are you good with that, Manny?
Yeah.
He gestured to the window that just showed some of the neighboring tower block.
1 sec. Fuck. Sorry, typing sucks right now. This left me not my best. My intuition was failing me when a few months after that, I allowed Prudence and Molly to herd the creatures from the lift to floor 9. It's one of my biggest regrets. I should never have walked them up there. But I didn't know she was going to burn them all. She didn't give me a chance to reason. I became mistrusting of everyone and distracted. Not long after, I went away for a long while. So I guess the arsonists remained, and now they're threatening you. Tomorrow I will go. I will fix the mess I left behind. I am so sorry it's affected you so badly. I'd love to meet these twins. They sound incredibly brave.
They are.
I finally interrupted.
And I want to be there tomorrow. I want to lock Natalia away for good.
I can't allow it. You'll be attacked.
He cut me off entirely. I let it drop instantly, but in the back of my mind I knew I would be there no matter what. I went to sleep that night with my mind reeling. I wondered where Derek slept and if he needed to. I'll let you take it away, Manny.
The next morning I left my flat early, past the man on floor 5, and sat and waited on the steps at floor 8. I tested it, of course, and just like anticipated, ascending any higher took me straight to floor 10. Or 11, depending on if you hit a skip. So I returned to floor 8, and I waited. Derek hadn't indicated what time he was coming, but I was ready. I would wait all day and night if I had to, but luckily I didn't. Derek was climbing the stairs at around 11 a.m. I had already been there for 3 hours, but it had been worth it. He looked particularly unimpressed to see me. His face still looked kind, though, even with a sour expression. I can't stop you, can I? He sighed, sounding resigned in his tone.
Not for anything.
You have to promise to stay back. If you get your girl... What? Wait. If you get your girl approaches you, you can do what you need to do. But you have to stay back, he pleaded. I nodded and stood up. We ascended the stairs, and for the very first time in my new life here, I saw the big plastic sign saying 9, the floor that didn't exist. As we pushed through the door, it was like entering an entirely new world. Everything was black, burned to carbon. You could smell nothing but charcoal. Literally nothing but empty shells of homes and flakes of what used to be sentimental objects remained. It was devastating to witness. If you've ever visited a mass grave site, you'll understand partly how I was feeling. It was sickening to think of all the lives needlessly lost. But I didn't get time to think. Natalia walked towards me, flying down the hallway.
Was it me that was Natalia, or was it you, Kenzie? I've forgotten.
It was you.
Cool. How the fuck did you get in here?
She screamed. Her eyes were wide and angry. I started to feel hotter already. Derek grabbed my arm and pulled me next to him, making sure to keep a tight hold of my arm. Where do you live? Derek asked her. I started to back away as the sweat dropped from my brow. I desperately wanted to shout out the number, but I couldn't. I was so hot. I wasn't functioning properly. Everything became so overwhelming I couldn't remember what Georgia had said, what flat Natalia had claimed to come from.
I'm not that stupid. I saw what happened to them.
She gestured over her shoulder to what must have been flat number 66, where a man laid on the floor, breathing, but looking broken. Just existing in that room. Prudence had been creative with the truth yet again. She didn't kill them. You can't kill them. What had Georgia said? I racked my brains as I felt the skin on my face starting to sting. I imagined her melting away. It was happening to me. I was next. And then, as my hair started to singe at the ends, it came to me.
71!
I screamed as loud as I could. I could barely see as Derek grabbed her arm and ran towards me with her. She was clawing at his eyes and face, screaming at him to let go. But he didn't burn. He just kept hold of her. When he approached flat 71, he beckoned me over. You do it, then get off this floor. He said, blunt but reasonable. I complied. I pushed hard. There was nothing but anger in her eyes. She pushed my face hard with her hand as I got her to cross the boundary into flat 71. I felt my skin sizzle and blister. My whole face was in agony, but I didn't stop pushing. Watching Natalia try to fight her way out of a door that didn't exist was both satisfying and humorous. The others had started to approach at the sound of the commotion. I lingered, hoping to watch her suffer, but Derek shot me one look and I knew it was time to go. Gemma?
I ran out the corridor back into the stairwell. I stopped for longer than I probably should have, but I knew I might not get to see that 9 again, and it would be and it would be worth it. I waited for Derek on floor 9's stairwell. Couldn't help but imagine the cultist burning to death the first time round. I could hear angry screams faintly from inside the corridor. It made me worry about Derek, but I knew that really I didn't need to. It took a while, but he eventually left the corridor and joined me in the stairwell. He didn't say anything, he just looked at me and the third-degree burns across my face. He didn't need to speak. I knew he had fixed the problem. We walked silently back down the stairs towards my flat. I looked back up at floor 9, knowing the building would seal it off for good. It took a few floors to reach floor 7, and I invited Derek in for a cup of tea. He rejected it, saying he wanted to go visit some old friends. Despite my injuries, I couldn't help but smile. Something I'd done was going to help these residents. I stood at my door and watched Derek walk away, pleased that there was some true good in this building. After a few steps down the hallway, Derek started to fade, almost like a CGI ghost in a movie. Every step he became more transparent. I felt my stomach turn again, like it had outside the lift. I ran out to follow him. I called after him, but by the time I'd reached where he had been, he was gone. I walked the entire corridor to the window at the back. I looked instant, just like every leaf from my shrubs. Why would she do this? What have I ever done to her? Every question possible crossed my mind. I could feel the frustration bubbling inside me. Everything about this place just threw up question after question, and for every answer I got, there were 10 new questions waiting to be asked. At that moment in time, though, only one was truly important.
I'll
How
take
did
it.
Prudence know? Cool.
Sorry.
Cool. Fine.
I thought about Terry and her telephone conversations. I didn't want to think that the sweet lady I thought Terry had turned out to be would do that, but it did cross my mind. I thought of Ian the postman. I'd had bad vibes from him for a while. Maybe he'd seen Derek coming up the stairs while on his rounds that morning. I stood there frozen, pondering all these things until I saw Prudence collapse onto the memorial bench sobbing, head in her hands. She was surrounded by the remains of my attempt at a garden with the shears laid out on the floor. The stairs were kind to me on the way down. It took 4 flights to make it to the bottom. I ran down the corridor and out the back entrance of the block, no idea what I was going to say.
Prudence!
Was all I could manage. Nice one, Cat. She sat bolt upright before turning and standing quicker than I thought it possible for an old lady. You evil, stupid little girl! Do you have any idea what you've done? She screamed, so much animation in her face that the spaces between her wrinkles pulsated like the veins on an angry weightlifter.
Me? You think I'm evil? You left that shitty note hidden, missing everything I need to know, and got my boyfriend killed. And what you're doing to your own...
I screamed, tears beginning to roll before she interrupted me. Don't you dare talk about her! Her voice cracked and she broke down again, this time falling to her knees, twigs and leaves sticking up to the bottom of her dress. I didn't know what else to do, so I sat down on the floor. I knew that it was probably a bad idea. This woman couldn't be trusted and I hadn't forgotten that, but seeing an old lady crying on the cement floor still made me feel awful.
How did you know about the garden?
I asked her calmly, trying to change my approach. She shoved a crumpled up piece of paper into my hands, but didn't look at me. Her hands remained on the floor.
Dear Prudence, I couldn't exist knowing what I'd done. I should never have told you about it. The last two won't grow stronger. She was never theirs to begin with. But I have to end her suffering. I'm sorry. Derek. I knew what she had done as soon as I finished the note. Lila, or what was left of her, was gone for good. Of all the creatures, only Jamie's killers from the lift remained. That's how Derek had spent the few hours I'd slept between our encounters.
This is all your fault,
she sniffed.
My whole family are gone because of you.
That hurt a lot. I trembled as I tried to speak, but I always really hated confrontation, and could feel myself starting to glitch.
How can you say that? I saw her and she was trapped in a tiny cage eating dog food and small animals. Your family died in that lift, just like my Jamie.
I may have struggled to get my words out, but I wasn't about to let Prudence Hemmings blame me for her decisions. Lila was better off dead than what she was, however awful that may sound.
To your face.
Prudence growled at me.
Take you a visit in floor number 9. He did this to her in the first place, not me. And now he's disfigured you.
She was spinning things. I could feel throbbing as she mentioned my face. I really should have had medical attention.
This isn't his fault. You messed him up and he did that to her because of you. You told me that yourself.
I tried ferociously to defend Derek, but something inside me still felt uncomfortable about what he had done. I couldn't help it. Lila was an innocent little girl who shouldn't have been punished for Prue's mistakes. This whole thing was such a mess.
I was grieving, and then I had her back for all those years, and then I lost Bernie, and then my home, and now I have to grieve for her all over again.
Prudence continued to cry, but softer. I looked around at the chaos she created and up at the block my boyfriend had died in and rolled my eyes in disbelief that she could be so selfish. She continued.
Let me tell you about Lila. She was a beautiful little girl. As I mentioned before, I have 2 older children. They've had many other grandchildren. However, I hadn't spoken to my eldest 2 in years, even before what happened with Lila. Lila was my first opportunity to get to know one of my grandchildren. Bernie adored her too, always reading her stories and sneaking her sweets. I begged my son to allow her to stay. My children were all incredibly ungrateful. They all had it easy growing up and I still resented me. I gave them a good, strict upbringing, but they didn't appreciate it. They said I was a cruel mother. Lila's dad was the only one I spoke to, but our relationship still wasn't that of a typical loving mother and son. She was a second chance. It was a miracle when he agreed. I was more shocked he had to convince his wife to allow it. That awful harlot of a woman never liked me, although I didn't like her either. They refused to speak to me after everything. I haven't heard from them since. They had more grandchildren I'll never meet. I knew at the time my relationships with any of my children were over for good. So when Derek gave me a solution, I took it. I wasn't entirely truthful when we first spoke. I said I hadn't wanted this, but I was desperate. There was never a way to bring her back safely. Derek explained she would become what she would become to me. He was initially trying to put me off even trying to get her back. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. But I couldn't pass the idea of my beautiful little Lila needing her grandmother forever. I suppose I was too ashamed to admit it before. But why should I be ashamed? My altercation with Derek happened after she was back, when he tried to kill her the first time. Sprouting the same things on that note. What kind of monster wants to kill a little girl? That's why I trashed the garden. He said he wasn't coping with the news of the new block when he suggested it, that he shouldn't have told me it was even possible and she had to die. I hid her until the bulldozers came in. When he disappeared, I thought I was safe to spend the rest of my life with her. Bernie hated me. He's spending time with Lila was all I lived for. I grew to love how she was.
I felt sick. Listening to Prudence talk brought up so much repressed feelings about Jamie. I hadn't even time to grieve or process anything. I missed him terribly. My old life and my old future felt a million miles away. I was relieved to know that Derek hadn't tricked Prudence or even intended to create Rat Lila. He was truly good. But she didn't get to have a life. You live for her, but she wasn't really living. How could a sane person do that to their own flesh and blood? I retorted.
I have no idea. This place can make you do irrational things. But she had a life. She had me. That's all she needed.
She was certainly right about the building and irrational actions, the pain intensifying on my face, throbbing in agreement. But I was still convinced she had lost it Dr. Frankenstein style where Rat Lila was concerned. She had stopped crying. Her rage levels were rising again. I tried to tell her that it wasn't really the child she'd known, but she seemed to have grown an entirely new attachment to the creature that replaced what she lost. Every rational argument I gave was met with increasing levels of screaming. She got less coherent as she went on. The argument was going nowhere. We went back and forth for what felt like forever. After a while, she started to get closer to me. We had both stood up by this point, and despite her haggard and frail appearance, Prudence was truly frightening. She looked unhinged. Her words were no longer going in. I was overwhelmed and had too many thoughts rushing through my mind to process her ranting. I took a few steps back, clearing a small distance between us. By this point, out of the corner of my eye, I could see neighbours in windows of the block, watching the altercation outside. Prue's screaming had brought a lot of attention. It was bright and I couldn't see well, but I turned to scan the windows and did recognise Eddie and Ellie watching from their windows, trying to wave at me.
They frantically waved and pointed. I tried waving back and gesturing to them, but they kept pointing at me. Why were they pointing? Then I heard it, the garden shears scraping against the ground as Prue picked them up and charged to me. You ignorant little bitch! You aren't even listening! You don't deserve my home! You killed her! The twins had been telling me to turn around. I shouldn't have taken my eyes off her. Luckily, unlike my earlier shock when I had first seen her, I didn't freeze. My fight-or-flight instincts kicked in and I ran faster than I ever had before. I burst back into the building and heard the neighbors on the bottom floor lock their doors in a symphony of bolts clicking. I couldn't blame them. Prudence wasn't far behind me and I wouldn't want to take her on in her current state if given a choice. But it didn't stop me pounding on their doors begging someone to call the police. Although something told me that in this building that wasn't going to happen. I ran up the stairs, still being followed by her. By the second floor, most were still locked, but a few had come out of their homes armed with a variety of heavy objects. Even in a crisis, I couldn't fault the community spirit here. I ran another flight of stairs. That became 2, but still led me to floor 3 and then to the back of the corridor. I pounded on Terry's door. My heart was racing, but when I turned, Prue was nowhere to be seen. I was hoping the people who came out of floor 2 had stopped her, but something was odd. I hadn't heard any commotion. This wasn't the end of it. Eddie and Ellie hugged me tight as Terry let me in and bolted the door shut quickly behind me. I told her about what had happened. She couldn't believe what Prue had done. It turned out no one knew about Lila. I was edgy for the first hour, but Prue had disappeared. Terry helped to clean my burn and put some cold compress on it. She offered to take me to the hospital, but I couldn't. I was too shaken up from what had just happened. I couldn't face trying to explain how I'd sustained my injuries, and I still hadn't reported Jamie missing. He still hadn't had any messages from his family, and work had given up calling, but his friends had started. They were harassing me nonstop, but I had been too distracted to come up with a decent lie. It had been a week since I moved in, and it wouldn't be long before people realized something was seriously wrong. My conversations with my family had been short, with me insisting they didn't visit until we were unpacked and set up.
On top of a murderous old lady and an untold amount of abnormal issues, the real world problems were starting to creep up on me. I sat with Terry for hours, drinking tea and chatting to her. It started to get dark, and Eddie and Ellie came into the living room after playing in their room for a while. The voids replaced the big, brown puppy dog eyes again, and their claws looked especially sharp, but to me they were still adorable. Their transformation prompted me to head back to my flat. It was late. I needed to work out what to do next and how to dig myself out of this giant hole. I couldn't just keep planting gardens. I needed to do this myself. I wandered up the stairs. They went on for a while, but nothing too horrific. I passed the man on floor 5, nodding politely and continuing my ascent. I wondered if he'd received the letter of concern yet. He was a little unsettling. When I got to my floor, Mr. Prentice was making his animal noises again. I smiled, which hurt my face. After all the madness, I was starting to find the seemingly benign horrors of this building oddly comforting. I reached my flat and turned the key in the door before bolting myself in like Terry had. I could feel something wasn't right the moment I entered. The flat was in chaos, which was nothing new because we had only moved in a week ago, and I had been too preoccupied to unpack. But things were out of place. The organized chaos wasn't how I'd left it. Then she strolled out of my kitchen. Prudence Hemmings. She was carrying a large carving knife in her left hand this time. She had prepared for her attack. She smiled at me and lifted her right hand, jingling a set of keys that she had entered with. I turned to unbolt the door, but she grabbed me from behind before I could turn the handle to open it and held the knife to my throat.
"I'll kill you for what you've done,"
she whispered into my ear. Without a second thought, I leaned forward just a tad and swung my head back as hard as I could. I couldn't believe that it worked, but I must have broken her nose. Prudence dropped the knife and clutched her face, blood streaming between her fingers. I went to grab the knife, but she was closer and doing the same thing. I had no other option but to run again. I grabbed the door handle and turned it to exit the flat as she tried to stab me. I was mostly out the door, but her arm was close enough to reach my side, and I felt the knife pierce the side of my torso. I was in searing pain, but I didn't stop running. As I stepped outside my flat, I could still hear Mr. Prentice's noise flooding the entire hallway. It gave me an idea.
I ran towards his door, Prudence stabbing at me frantically with blood gushing from her nose. A few got me as I stood outside flat 48. Pain was awful, and I could feel myself starting to drift out of consciousness. I was losing a lot of blood. I would give my last breath to end Prue. So running on nothing but adrenaline, I knocked hard on flat 48 and shouted, "Mr. Prentice, can you help me?" It was a shot in the dark, and I didn't know what would happen, but I had to try something. She had stopped stabbing at me. She was enjoying watching me bleed out slowly from the wounds she had already inflicted. I was incredibly weak, and I lost consciousness not long after that. But before I did, I heard heavy clunking from the inside of flat 48, chain locks being released and the bolts being undone. I watched with blurry vision as a large creature that I can only describe as a cross between a bull and a wolf charged out of the flat and trampled the old witch to death. I heard bones crunch just as she slipped away. I woke up in the hospital a day later. My parents were there, as were the police. Apparently, I'd been found just outside the tower block with my handbag missing by a neighbour who had been watching from a window as it happened. The police told me that the person had seen the mugging out from their window. They had seen two men approach me and Jamie, splash something in my face, attack us, and when he tried to fight back, they bundled my boyfriend into a car, which the police had been searching for no avail. He was officially missing. I was baffled, but grateful that Jamie's disappearance wouldn't be blamed on me. I went along with it and made out that he had ghosted work to enjoy our first week living together. I had been stabbed 4 times, but thankfully in all the right places. There is such a thing as the right place to be stabbed. I lost a lot of blood, but I was going to be fine. They were all shallow. They assumed my burns were chemical and happened during the mugging too. The police promised to keep us updated, but they still can't find the car. They never will. I wish the story the police had been told were true. It left some hope for Jamie.
I'll take it.
Cool.
My parents weren't keen on me returning to the flat after what happened. They said the area was too rough and that I was living proof it wasn't safe. They offered to collect my stuff for me. I insisted, though, told them that I wanted to see how I felt and that they couldn't force me not to. I was released from the hospital 2 days after I woke up in there. When I arrived at the flats, it was strange. It felt like home. Despite everything, something about this place drew me to it. I took the lift for the first time since Jamie had died. I had to. I wasn't recovered enough to conquer too many stairs just yet, and I couldn't guarantee they'd be kind to me. I smiled at the lack of a button 9 and winced at the thought of the creatures. As I reached my corridor, I saw Mr. Prentice walking along with his newspaper and milk in a bag. He turned to me and smiled.
I wasn't sure you'd come back. It's nice to see you up and walking.
He made small talk as if I hadn't seen him literally trample a woman to death a couple of days prior. The whole experience had been so disorienting that I started to wonder if I really had been mugged and had dreamed the note and everything that's happened since. Then he said something that confirmed everything was real.
I never liked that woman, but you've got a real friend in the lady downstairs.
He winked at me and turned the key in his door. I got into mine and sat on the second-hand sofa. I felt empty but relieved. With Prue and the imposter neighbors all gone, the only threat left were the creatures in the lift, who were only a threat between 111 and 333. Maybe I could start to live a semi-peaceful life in this place. Terry knocked on the door, my handbag that I had left at hers before Prue attacked me in my flat on her arm. Mr. Prentice was right. She was a good friend. I thanked her for what she had done and for what she had told the police. She said it was pure luck that she found me. She had been walking up to return the bag and found me and Prue sprawled out on the floor. I asked what happened to Prue's body and she just pointed in the direction of flat 448. He was eating it, she said. It's been days now and I've decided to stay. I can't imagine going back to complete normality after everything I've been through, and I've grown quite attached to some of the building's quirks. I tried replanting the garden with the help of the twins. I ripped a few stitches doing it, and Derek never came. I think he's gone for good. I'm ready to embrace life here. The last few days have been hard, but there's some time to breathe. Along with the time to breathe came the time to grieve, and I've been grieving badly for Jamie. This leads me to the last thing I have to tell you. Last night, I laid in bed, plagued with thoughts of Prue and everything that had happened. But I couldn't get it to leave my mind was how much happiness it brought her to have Lila back. It infected every part of my thoughts. I know you all warned me not to, but I did it. I repeated the ritual. I haven't caught him yet, but I've heard the scratching. Jamie's back. You
right.
idiot!
And that's the end.
Yep.
And I just want to take a moment to say, well, that at least I didn't see anything, but thank you all for not making any Among Us jokes every time the word imposter was brought up.
Yes. I like that. Yes.
And Mike's first comment is, no titty rat boyfriend.
What's wrong with you?
God damn it.
Ooh, Raptor did not like it.
Well, fuck you, Raptor. No, I'm just joking. I understand.
Raptor said, not gonna lie, that was pretty boring.
And,
God damn.
Well, honestly, I think my favorite part was, Gemma, there were 2 or 3 times that, your English accent stuck outside of the dialogue.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I
What
didn't
did I do?
notice.
I think it was, like, it was either Michael Cameron said, the descodification is working.
Oh, so like yeah, so my accent followed me.
Yeah.
Through
Yeah, like, you
through
finished reading Cat's dialogue, but you kept up the accent.
So thoughts? We know what Raptor's thoughts are, but why don't we let's get the narrator's opinions.
Well, I want to hear everyone's thoughts on, what they thought I was going for with Derek.
I had something in my like it sounded really familiar, and I'm probably going to I'm probably going to I'm really tired, Manny.
Just tell us what you were going for.
Hold on. Oh, God.
I bet it's not who I actually think it is.
Michael Caine.
That's what you were going for?
Yes.
I can kind of hear it now that you said it, but for some reason I was thinking Baldric from the Blackadder.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I was doing that.
And that's what Bob Ross calls a happy little accident.
Yes.
It worked.
All right, now that you have we know what your impression was, and what are your thoughts?
I enjoyed it well enough. Though I agree with Cameron, what Cameron said here. It was decently written, but the ending was a bit dissatisfying.
Yeah, I did not like the
Well.
ending. The whole time I'm thinking she's way smarter than that. Why? That really seemed like the writer just pulled it out of their ass just to have a creepy ending.
Well. There's more.
Oh no.
Oh God.
I found that the person has written more.
Ooh.
It starts off from that ending.
Oh jeez.
Well, then we can tackle that next week.
Well, actually, I mean, with the, I'll say, lukewarm reception this story's gone overall, next week we're actually going to cover the story Psychosis.
Hey.
Yeah.
I like Mike's comment here, though. Derek never mentioned throwing anything away. Too subtle. Raptor says no more, please.
God damn, Raptor really didn't like this.
Raptor being a straight savage. I appreciate the honesty, though.
Yeah.
So my thoughts were, I think what really could have improved this is, well, first of all, it wouldn't qualify to be on No Sleep then, but I think if this could have been posted elsewhere, is if it weren't in first person. And I think that's a big downfall because when you're in third person, the author has the liberty to switch perspectives, so we can flash back to Prudence's perspective when she lost her granddaughter, or Derek's perspective when he transforms Prudence's granddaughter, rather than having large bits of dialogue where the writer is trying to get us to imagine the flashback, but all I'm really thinking of is these two people sitting down while one just keeps on talking. You know?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from there, because that was one of my criticisms of the story, was the blocks and blocks of text when it came to the talking, and it just seemed like it was like there seemed to be a really like intense scene, but the talking went on for ages, and I was like, and I'm just like, Do you honestly think that they'd be standing there for that length of time talking this like this long without anything happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's one thing with Prudence and Derek because then nothing's really happening, but when it came to the cult members, that's when it got real egregious. And I'm just like picturing like, you know, when dialogue happens, but it's not exactly a cutscene during a video game, and all the cult members are just standing in the background bobbing, like ready to go, but the one character still keeps talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And God, I had been picturing Derek as Michael Caine before. Now I'm just seeing Baldric from Blackadder the Third.
I'm sorry.
And again, another gripe, and I've mentioned this when we did our little deep dive into, I think it was our third deep dive into the Save the Creepypasta wiki. The cult thing I thought was totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like I'm down with the whole concept of the rat creatures and the whole building itself being like its own living organism where just the craziest shit happens. I am really down with that. But then you just throw a cult in it that really had nothing to do with the apartment complex. It just gave another antagonist for,
Do you know what?
for the main character that kind of got beaten really easily.
Yeah, what I thought with that was that keeping them as the whole concept of them being just the sort of the neighbors who got burned.
Yeah, I
and
would
then
have been
they
fine with
caused
that.
trouble.
Like,
I was fine with that part. I didn't think it needed to be some sort of arsonist cult.
Yeah.
like if they had just been neighbors who had lived on that floor who were angry angry and resentful at the other living residents for allowing this to happen, like that, I think integrates a lot better into the story.
Yeah, and honestly, that's originally when I first read this, that's what I thought they were going to end up being. Like, you know, they were angry spirits or something, and because they had died in fire, they were able to control it or something.
That's what I thought originally as well.
Exactly. But when you add, and this is what I said when we previously talked about the subject, when you add cults, but you really don't take the time to actually think about what the points of cults are.
Yeah.
Like, what's an arsonist cult? What are they gaining from this? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I like fire.
It looks
I
like
think it overcomplicated the story more than it already was.
It looks like Cameron was thinking along the same lines as us.
Awesome.
Gemma, the way you said I like fire, though, I just imagined the I like turtles kid, just one of these cultists, though. So what were you thinking with burning down the building? I like fire.
The way that I had it in my head was in Over the Garden Wall, where like the horse is like, I like to steal.
Yes.
Love that it works.
And Mike says, I like fire, Gemma 2021.
I have to watch Over the Garden Wall again soon. It's been a while.
I just did a couple of days ago because I got the DVDs.
I know, you sent me the picture.
Well, the DVD.
Going to the tractor to made Adelaide.
No, you sent me the picture of the DVD, I think, along with Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Yeah, I was just saying in general.
So, when's our Shark Boy and Lava Girl?
We decided
yes.
this Sunday.
Yes, this Sunday. What time do you want to do that?
I will probably be free all day. You can pick.
All right. How about we aim for noon?
8.
Nice. So yes, everyone, Sunday at noon for Eastern U.S. time or 5 p.m. for UK. We will be streaming the adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
And after that, I'm gonna make Manny watch the Fred trilogy.
Yes.
Gemma, did you watch Memulus's video on the trilogy yet?
No, I haven't yet. I was saving that for like when I was like, I've got, cause it's like for 45 minutes long, and the last video I watched that was for 45 minutes long, that was with Jacob yesterday. We watched this video about the nostalgia critics of the wall, but the person who was who was doing the video was really funny and knew exactly what he was talking about.
Which one? Because I've watched a few.
Folding something. His name's like Folding something.
Huh.
I just have to say
it only came out yesterday, the video.
Oh, okay. I'll check that out later.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that I think Raptor might be excited for the stream on Sunday.
Excited for the what?
The stream on Sunday.
Oh, you think?
Yeah. Yes, Shark Boy and Lava Girl. All right.
I think we know what Raptor's favorite movie is.
Yeah. I would have thought Jurassic Park or The Land Before Time.
Folding Ideas, that's what the channel's name is, according to Mike.
Yes, that was it. Folding Ideas. Really
Perfect.
good.
I will look that up now, and then I will save it to watch later.
Yes. You should. It was very, very amusing. And
the Nostalgia Critic, The Wall. Save to watch later.
That's still my greatest
growing list of videos on my watch later list.
The Wall is still my greatest sin.
I got the album for Christmas.
The Wall?
Yes, the original Wall, not Doug Walker's version of it.
I'm sorry, I just had to make sure.
If I ever unironically purchased the Nostalgia Critics album of The Wall, put a bullet in my head.
I have my copy I got a while back. It was I got the vinyl of it somewhere. I love it.
Oh, Mike says, "How's it your sin, Manny? You didn't make it." I was the one who sent the super chat. Okay, you see, people were Cobb and Gemma were streaming, reviewing things, and people were asking if they would review The Wall from Doug Walker.
Yeah.
Cobb said only if they got paid to. So I sent $1.99 saying, "There, you've been paid." And he's like, "Okay, my dude, my man. I know I said we'd watch if someone paid us. Now, is $1.99 enough to get us to do that?"
No.
Yes. So yeah, it was my super chat that got them to review it, and I felt so bad when I heard Gemma basically turn into the Incredible Hulk.
See, I thought where this was going at first before you clarified this was you made Cobb and Gemma do it, was that you were constantly pestering Doug to review it, at which point I was fully prepared to end our friendship.
No. If anything, I was like fully encouraging Doug to just stop making content altogether.
Yeah. Alright, I'm gonna head off because it's really quite late and I'm really tired. And yes.
Sleep well, Gemma.
And please remember tomorrow to send me some more of what you were reading to us before we went live.
Yes.
Have a good night, Gemma.
Night.
And you. Bye.
Good night, Cobb.
Night.
Love you. Counteract your sin. It was the stream that got me to watch The Wall, the real one. So every cloud has a silver lining. Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Good job, Mike.
Oh, but Mike also says I have Doug Walker's The Wall on 8-track vinyl and wax cylinder.
For shame.
That's masochism.
And then Karen, Bean Daddy, secretly a massive Doug Walker fan.
The thing is, I was when I was younger. But
so was I. I was a big Nostalgia Critic fan in high school and in early college.
Yeah, but then I was like, what the fuck am I doing with my life?
And then, like, once the channel Not So Awesome document came out, I think I was trying to convince myself for a little while after that Doug wasn't totally at fault, and then I was like, no, this is fucked. I can't justify this.
Yeah, pretty much. So
I tried because, like, again, those were some fond memories. But then, like, I'm like, no, this is fucked.
yep. And Mike says, we were all wrong as children. Manny and Kenzie, raise your raptor right.
And Rudy.
Yeah.
Rudy has primary custody.
Yes. Reject Doug Walker, embrace Wall. Alright, but, so yeah, that's, the end of the No Sleep. And as I said, next Wednesday we will begin Psychosis. We'll probably finish it in one stream. And tomorrow, Kenzie and I will be back with Raptor to continue Empress Teresa.
Goody.
Yes. The brain tumors that's causing all three of us.
Last week was pretty fun though. We got a lot of mileage out of French jokes.
Yeah. Yeah, that and just like slagging off Bouton for his baseless hatred for the French.
And whatever the fuck happened at the end when Gemma and Co finally joined in.
Soup, simp, soup, simp. But thank you guys for stopping by. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time. Same bean time, same bean channel.